I never expected to hear those words from my own father. She's nothing, a failure, should have never been born. That's what my dad said when he thought no one was listening. For years, I'd paid the mortgage on our $830,000 home where they lived rent-free. I'd sacrificed everything for them. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just made a decision. 1 week later, I sold my luxury home and moved to another state, leaving them alone with the consequences of their words. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happened after I discovered the truth about my family's true feelings. It's a journey that might help anyone dealing with toxic family relationships. My name is Audrey Foster, and at 31, I'd built what most people would consider a successful life. Every morning, my alarm would go off at 5 a.m., and I'd drag myself out of bed for an intense hour-long workout in the home gym I'd set up in the basement of my luxury home in the Chicago suburbs. After a protein smoothie and quick shower, I'd be out the door by 7:15, battling traffic to reach my downtown office at Hartman Financial Advisors. My colleagues saw me as the perfect example of hard work paying off. After graduating with my MBA from Northwestern, I'd secured a position as a financial analyst and steadily worked my way up. 3 promotions in 5 years had put me on the fast track, and my boss, Victoria Hayes, had taken me under her wing as a mentee. "Audrey, you're going places in this company," she'd tell me during our monthly check-ins. "Your attention to detail and dedication to clients is exactly what we value here." What they didn't see was what waited for me at home. 3 years ago, I'd purchased my dream house, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood, valued at $830,000. I'd planned to live there alone, maybe eventually with a partner. Instead, within 2 months of moving in, my parents, Raymond and Margaret Foster, had moved in with me after my father's construction business went bankrupt for the second time. "It's just temporary, sweetheart," Mom had assured me. "Just until we get back on our feet." 3 years later, they were still there, and I was still paying for everything. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, even their cell phone bills and car insurance. They contributed nothing financially, not even token amounts for household expenses. Dad spent his days applying for jobs he never seemed to get, while Mom volunteered at church and met friends for lunch. Every Wednesday evening, my sister Heather would bring her 3 kids over for family dinner. She'd married young to her high school boyfriend Keith, had her first child at 21, and had dropped out of community college. Despite this, my parents beamed with pride whenever she walked through the door. "There's our girl," Dad would say, embracing her while barely acknowledging my presence. After these dinners, I'd retreat to my home office to catch up on work, exhaustion settling into my bones. The weight of supporting everyone was crushing, but I'd convinced myself it was my duty. I was the successful one, after all. This was what good daughters did. My best friend Zoe Curtis never understood. "Audrey, they're taking advantage of you," she'd say during our rare lunch dates. "They're adults. They should be supporting themselves, not living off their daughter." "They're my parents," I'd reply, the familiar defense automatic by now. Dad's still looking for work, and Mom never had a career. "What am I supposed to do, throw them out on the street?" Zoe would just shake her head, knowing there was no point arguing. She'd known me since college, watched me achieve every goal I set for myself, only to hand over the rewards to my family. Still, I was excited about that Wednesday morning. I had an important presentation for a potential new client, a retirement fund worth millions. Victoria had entrusted me with the lead, saying she was grooming me for the next level. "Land this account, and we'll be talking about that senior analyst position," she'd promised. As I straightened my blazer and checked my appearance one last time before leaving, I caught sight of my father in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. "Big day today, Dad," I said, trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. "Wish me luck." He barely looked up. "Sure, honey. Good luck." I drove to work, pushing down the familiar sting of disappointment. Today was about my career, about proving to Victoria and myself that I deserved that promotion. Today was about my future. Little did I know how drastically that future was about to change. The presentation went better than I could have hoped. The clients were engaged, asking insightful questions, and by the end, they were nodding along with my recommendations. Victoria caught my eye across the conference room and gave me a subtle thumbs up. As we wrapped up, the CEO of the retirement fund shook my hand firmly. "Miss Foster, you've clearly done your homework. We'll be in touch very soon." After they left, Victoria pulled me aside. "That was excellent work, Audrey. I think we've got them. Take the rest of the day off, you've earned it." Excitement bubbled in my chest as I packed up my materials. I couldn't wait to share the news with someone, and despite everything, my parents were the first people I thought of. Maybe this time, Dad would actually be proud. I checked my watch, 2:30 p.m. They wouldn't be expecting me for hours, which meant I could surprise them with the good news and maybe even suggest celebrating with dinner out. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed both their cars were there, unusual for a Wednesday afternoon. Mom usually had her book club. I entered quietly through the side door that led directly to the kitchen, planning to announce my early arrival and my success. But then I heard my father's voice coming from his bedroom, which he'd converted into a home office of sorts. He was on a video call, his voice carrying clearly down the hallway. "Yeah, Stan, we're still living with her. What choice do we have? The housing market is ridiculous these days." I recognized the voice on the other end as Stanley Bennett, my father's friend from his construction days. I was about to call out when something in my father's tone made me pause. "Hold on, let me end this call properly. Audrey's always nagging me about just hitting the red button." I heard a click, followed by my father's voice again, more relaxed now. "There, now we can talk freely." Except he hadn't ended the call. I could still hear Stanley asking if he was still there. My father had only minimized the window, thinking he'd disconnected. "She's nothing, Stan. A failure. Should have never been born." The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze in the hallway, unable to move forward or retreat. "Sure, she makes good money," my father continued, his voice dripping with disdain, "but what kind of life is that? 31 and still single, married to her job. It's pathetic. And she lords it over us like we should be grateful she's letting us live here." "At least you've got a roof over your head," Stanley replied, his voice tinny through the speakers. "Yeah, but at what cost? My dignity. Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask what I do, and I have to admit my daughter supports me? It's humiliating." "What about Heather? She doing okay?" My father's voice immediately softened, pride evident in every word. "Now there's my real achievement. 3 beautiful grandkids, a solid marriage. Sure, she didn't go to some fancy college like Audrey, but she's got what matters, a family, love. Keith's business is doing well enough. They're talking about buying a bigger house soon." I heard the bedroom door open and my mother's voice joined the conversation. "Who are you talking to, Ray?" "Just Stan. We were discussing the girls." "Oh," my mother sighed. "Did you tell him about Audrey's promotion? The one she won't stop talking about?" "What's there to tell? Another rung on the corporate ladder. Big deal." "I know," my mother sighed. "Sometimes I wonder where we went wrong with her. So cold, so focused on money and status. Not like our Heather." "Exactly. The only good thing about living here is we're saving a fortune. Another year or 2, and we can afford to put a down payment on a place near Heather and the kids. That's the dream." "I'm tired of walking on eggshells around Audrey," my mother agreed. "Pretending to be interested in her work stories. Remember last Christmas when she gave us those expensive watches?" My father laughed. "Like we needed a reminder of how much money she has. So tasteless." My stomach lurched. Those watches had cost me $3,000. I'd spent weeks researching the perfect style for each of them, wanting to give them something special that would last. "Well, we'll just keep playing the game for now," my mother said. "She needs us more than we need her, even if she doesn't realize it. Without us, who does she have? No husband, no kids, just that awful friend Zoe who keeps putting ideas in her head." "True. Remember when Zoe convinced her to take that trip to Cabo instead of helping us with the bathroom remodel? Selfish, both of them. I'd cancelled that trip at the last minute after my father complained about needing help with house projects. I'd lost the deposit and used my vacation days to paint and tile instead." The conversation continued, but I couldn't bear to hear more. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Nausea swept over me in waves. I backed away silently, grateful I'd worn flats instead of my usual heels. Somehow, I made it back to my car without being detected. As I sat behind the wheel, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't insert the key. Fragments of their conversation echoed in my mind: a failure, should have never been born, my real achievement, saving a fortune. The girl they wished had never existed was bankrolling their comfortable retirement. I don't remember driving to Zoe's apartment. I must have operated on autopilot, muscle memory guiding me through familiar streets while my mind replayed 31 years of memories in a harsh new light. The times my academic achievements were acknowledged with distracted nods while Heather's C+ in art was displayed proudly on the refrigerator. The college graduation party they left early because Heather's son had a cold. The countless times they needed loans that were never repaid. By the time I parked outside Zoe's building, my shock had hardened into something else, something cold and clear and certain. For the first time in my life, I saw my family exactly as they were, not as I desperately wanted them to be. What? Zoe's voice echoed through her apartment as I recounted what I'd overheard. Her normally calm demeanor had given way to rage on my behalf, her hands gesticulating wildly as she paced back and forth. You need to confront them right now, she insisted, reaching for her phone. I'll drive you back there myself. I shook my head, curling deeper into the corner of her couch. I can't go back there tonight. I can't look at them knowing what they really think of me. Then stay here as long as you need. The shock was wearing off, leaving room for memories to surface, moments I'd dismissed or rationalized away, now returning with painful clarity. Like the time I'd used my entire first year-end bonus, $15,000, to pay off the remaining debts from my father's failed business. He'd accepted the check with a casual, "Thanks, kiddo," before immediately calling Heather to discuss her eldest son's private school applications. Or the European vacation I'd planned for years, postponed 3 times to cover family emergencies. The first for Dad's knee surgery, which somehow didn't prevent him from playing golf 2 weeks later. The second for Mom's car accident, minor, but requiring a replacement vehicle they couldn't afford. The third for Heather's unexpected medical bills when insurance wouldn't cover her youngest daughter's treatment. When I finally moved into my house, the crown jewel of my achievements, they'd shown up 3 weeks later with suitcases and sad stories about their landlord selling their rental property. I'd given them the master bedroom with its en-suite bathroom, moving my things to the smaller guest room to accommodate them. My privacy, my space, my sanctuary surrendered without a fight because that's what daughters do. I've defended him so many times, I whispered, recalling conversations with colleagues who'd questioned my father's business acumen after meeting him at company events. People would ask why he kept failing, and I'd make excuses: bad economy, dishonest partners, bad luck. Because you're loyal, Zoe said firmly. That's not a character flaw, Audrey. My phone buzzed with a text from Danielle Parker, my assistant at work. Great job today. Victoria's thrilled. Did you go home sick? Let me know if you need anything. I'd completely forgotten about the presentation's success, the reason I'd gone home early in the first place. It seemed trivial now, overshadowed by the revelation that had upended my world. My whole identity has been built around being the good daughter, I said, the realization settling heavily on my shoulders. The responsible one, the successful one. But they never wanted that. They wanted me to be Heather. Zoe snorted. Heather, who can barely keep a job and relies on her husband's family business to survive. That Heather? They don't see it that way. They see her children, her marriage, the normal life I've never had because I've been too busy working to support everyone. As night fell, I found myself scrolling through property laws on my phone, researching homeowner rights. The house was solely in my name. They had no legal claim to it, no right to stay if I asked them to leave. The thought sent a strange mixture of guilt and liberation coursing through me. The next morning, Zoe used her connections to get me an emergency session with her therapist, Dr. Amelia Richardson. What you're describing is a profound betrayal, Dr. Richardson said after I'd recounted the previous day's events. It's normal to feel disoriented, angry, even grief-stricken. You're mourning the parents you thought you had. I keep wondering if I should just confront them, scream at them, make them understand how much they've hurt me, I admitted. She leaned forward slightly. Would that give you what you need? I considered the question. No, I finally said. They'd deny it, or minimize it, or turn it around on me somehow. They always do. Then what would give you what you need? The answer came with surprising clarity. Freedom. I need to be free of them, of the obligation, the guilt, the constant striving for approval I'm never going to get. And how might you achieve that freedom? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I found myself mentally calculating numbers, my savings, the house's value, the cost of starting over somewhere new, somewhere without the weight of familial expectations crushing me daily. By the time I left Dr. Richardson's office, a plan was forming. Not a confrontation, but an exit strategy. I would not give them the satisfaction of my anger or my tears. I would simply remove myself from the equation of their lives as cleanly and completely as possible. That night, staying at Zoe's again, I created a detailed spreadsheet, steps to take, calls to make, research to complete. By dawn, I had a comprehensive exit plan mapped out, a timeline for extracting myself from the life I'd built around people who had never truly wanted me in theirs. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the lightness of a decision made, a path forward clear. For once, I would put myself first, and I wouldn't apologize for it. For the first time in my entire career, I called in sick the next morning. Victoria was understanding. "You've banked enough goodwill to take a month off if you needed to," but concern colored her voice. I assured her it was just a 24-hour bug, nothing serious. The lie tasted strange on my tongue. I'd always been pathologically honest, especially at work, but now deception came easily. Perhaps I'd learned from the best. My first call was to Trevor Michaels, my financial advisor. We'd met monthly for years as I built my investment portfolio, but I'd never heard the urgency in his voice that I did when I explained I needed an emergency meeting. "I can see you at 11 o'clock, he said. "Is everything okay, Audrey?" "It will be," I replied, surprised by my own certainty. Trevor's office was on the 30th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and chrome with views of Lake Michigan. As I explained my situation, sanitized, without the emotional details, his expression remained professionally neutral. "So you want to liquidate some investments to purchase a new property in another state while simultaneously selling your current home," he clarified. "Yes. I need to know how much I can access quickly without penalties, and what the tax implications will be." He typed rapidly, pulling up my accounts. "You're in a strong position. The market's favorable for sellers right now, especially in your neighborhood. What locations are you considering for relocation?" "Denver," I said, the decision made somewhere between Zoe's apartment and his office. "I've always loved the mountains." By the time I left Trevor's office, I had a clear picture of my financial standing and a referral to a real estate agent who specialized in quick sales for professional clients. Natalie Wells called me before I'd even reached my car. "I understand you're looking for a discreet, expedited sale," she said, "no preamble necessary. I can be at your property this afternoon to assess." "Not today," I replied quickly. "My parents are home. Tomorrow morning would be better." "Parents living with you?" she asked, her tone shifting slightly. "No. The property is solely in my name." "Good. That simplifies things considerably." My next call was to a real estate agent in Denver, recommended by Natalie. Melissa Johnson specialized in relocating professionals and understood my need for discretion and speed. "I can start sending you virtual tours today," she assured me. "Based on your budget and preferences, I already have several properties in mind." The lawyer came next. Patricia Alvarez, a referral from a colleague who'd gone through a complicated divorce. She confirmed what I already suspected. As the sole owner, I had every right to sell my property regardless of who was living there. "You'll need to follow proper eviction procedures if they refuse to leave voluntarily," she cautioned, "but given the circumstances, I doubt it will come to that." By mid-afternoon, the framework of my new life was taking shape. I drove back to my house, timing my arrival for when I knew my mother would be at her weekly hair appointment. My father was likely in the basement, where he'd set up a makeshift workshop for projects he never completed. I slipped into my bedroom and began methodically sorting through my personal items. Important documents went into a secure portfolio: birth certificate, passport, insurance policies, property deeds. Jewelry and small valuables were next, packed into a carry-on suitcase I could easily transport to Zoe's. In the back of my closet, I found a box of childhood mementos I'd kept through multiple moves: diaries with little locks, school awards, photographs. I opened one diary from when I was 12, the handwriting large and looping. "Dad forgot my science fair today. Mom said he was too busy with work, but I saw him watching TV when I got home. Heather got a new bike for getting a B+ in math. I got all A's again, but no one noticed." Page after page documented small betrayals, moments of favoritism so normal to my childhood self that I'd recorded them matter-of-factly, without complaint. In another box, I found handmade gifts I'd created for my parents over the years: a clay pencil holder for Dad's desk, painted with careful detail, a beaded necklace for Mom that had taken weeks to string. Both items were dusty and unused, stored away rather than displayed or worn. I was carefully replacing these boxes when my phone rang. It was Heather. "Hey, sis, are you okay? Mom said you didn't come home last night." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Heather and I had never been close, the age gap and our parents' obvious favoritism creating a chasm between us. But she wasn't cruel, just self-absorbed in the way people can be when they've always been the center of attention. "I'm staying with Zoe for a few days," I said finally. "I need some space." "Space from what? Did something happen?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. I wasn't ready to tell her everything, but I needed to gauge her reaction, to see if she'd been part of their conversations about me. The cafe was busy, providing both ambient noise for privacy and enough witnesses to prevent a scene. Heather arrived looking harried, her blonde hair, so like our mother's, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd always been the pretty one, the charming one, while I was the smart one, a distinction that felt more like a consolation prize than a compliment. "What's going on?" she asked as soon as she sat down. "Mom's freaking out. She thinks you're having some kind of breakdown." "I'm selling the house," I said bluntly, watching her face carefully. Her eyes widened. "What? Why? You love that house." "I'm moving to Denver. I've already started the process." "Denver? But what about Mom and Dad? Where will they go?" There it was, her first thought was for our parents, not for me. But there was genuine confusion in her expression, not calculation. They hadn't included her in their planning. "They'll figure it out," I said, my voice steady. "They're adults. But they can't afford their own place right now. Dad's still looking for work, and Mom's never had a real job." "I'm aware," I replied, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "I've been supporting them completely for 3 years, paying the mortgage, utilities, groceries, everything." "Did you know that?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I knew you were helping them out." "Helping implies they contribute something." "They don't." Heather fidgeted with her coffee cup. "Look, I would help if I could, but with 3 kids and Keith's business just getting established." "I'm not asking you to help," I interrupted. "I'm telling you what's happening. I'm selling my house and moving away." "Because of Mom and Dad? Did they do something?" For a moment, I considered telling her everything, the overheard conversation, the years of dismissal and disrespect. But looking at her worried face, I realized she truly didn't know. She'd been shielded from the darker side of our parents, cushioned by their unconditional love and approval. "I need a change," I said instead. "The house will sell quickly. They'll need to find their own place." "They could stay with us temporarily," she offered, though without enthusiasm. "The guest room is small, but..." "That's between you and them," I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. "I just wanted you to know directly from me." As I walked away, she called after me, "Audrey, wait. Are you okay? Really?" I turned back, surprised by the genuine concern in her voice. For a brief moment, I saw past the golden child persona to the sister who had once, long ago, defended me against our father's criticism when I'd broken his favorite coffee mug. "I will be," I answered honestly. That afternoon, I had a video interview with Westbrook Financial in Denver, leveraging connections from a conference I'd attended last year. The hiring manager, Benjamin Clark, remembered me well. "We'd be lucky to have someone with your expertise, Audrey. The team lead position just opened up last month." Perfect timing. Perfect timing, indeed. As if the universe was finally aligning to help me break free. My final call of the day was to Victoria. I owed her the courtesy of transparency, at least professionally. "Denver," she repeated after I'd explained my situation. "That's unexpected. We have a satellite office there, you know. Not as prestigious as Chicago, but growing. Would you consider a transfer instead of resignation?" The offer took me by surprise. "You'd help me transfer? Audrey, you're one of our top performers. I'd rather keep you in the Hartman family, even if it's from a distance. Think about it. Let me know by Monday." As I ended the call, I realized I'd accomplished more in one day toward my own happiness than I had in years of striving to please my parents. The irony wasn't lost on me, it took discovering their true feelings to finally prioritize my own. That evening, I returned home for dinner, watching my parents through new eyes as they discussed their day, complained about neighbors, asked perfunctory questions about my illness. I answered pleasantly, passed the potatoes, and excused myself early, claiming fatigue. In my room, I continued preparations, transferring documents to secure cloud storage, researching moving companies, creating new bank accounts my parents couldn't access. With each step, the fog of obligation and guilt that had clouded my judgment for so long began to lift. In its place was something unfamiliar but welcome, determination, uncomplicated by the need for approval. 1 week later, my house was officially on the market. Natalie had worked miracles, arranging for professional staging and photography while my parents were out. The listing went live on Thursday evening, described as a luxury family home in prestigious neighborhood, priced to sell quickly. "We'll hold an open house this Sunday," Natalie informed me. "Based on comparable properties and current market conditions, I expect multiple offers by Monday morning." I nodded, scrolling through the listing photos on my laptop. The house looked beautiful, spacious and bright, devoid of the tension that had filled it in recent months. "I'll make sure my parents are out during the open house," I said. "About that," Natalie hesitated. "Have you told them yet?" "They'll find out soon enough," I replied. This soon enough came that very evening. I arrived home from work to find my father standing in the driveway, arms crossed, face thunderous. Beside him, my mother wrung her hands, her expression oscillating between hurt and anger. "What the hell is this?" Dad demanded, pointing to the "for sale" sign Natalie had installed that afternoon. I walked past him, unlocking the front door with steady hands. "It's exactly what it looks like. I'm selling the house." They followed me inside, my mother's voice rising to a pitch I recognized from childhood tantrum management. "You can't just sell our home without discussing it with us first." I set my briefcase down carefully on the entryway table. "It's not our home. It's my home. My name is on the deed, the mortgage, and every utility bill. I've made every payment for 3 years. So that gives you the right to throw your own parents out on the street." My father's face was turning the dangerous shade of red that had intimidated me since childhood. But I wasn't a child anymore. "I'm selling a property I own. What you do next is up to you." My mother stepped between us, tears already forming. She'd always been able to cry on command, a skill I'd both envied and resented. "Audrey, sweetheart, what's gotten into you? Is this about work? Are you under too much stress?" "This isn't an impulsive decision," I replied, my voice level. "The house has been professionally staged and photographed. The listing went live last night. There's an open house scheduled for Sunday." "Sunday?" "This Sunday," my father sputtered. "Where are we supposed to go?" "I've made reservations for brunch at the Drake. My treat. We should be gone from 11 to 3. My mother's tears dried up instantly. "You expect us to go to brunch while strangers walk through our home?" "My home," I corrected again. "And yes, that's exactly what I expect." My father pulled out his trump card. "I'm calling Heather. She'll talk some sense into you." I shrugged, the gesture so foreign to my usual accommodating body language that they both stared. "Call whoever you want." An hour later, we were seated in our living room in a twisted parody of a family meeting. Heather had arrived, kids in tow, her husband Keith trailing behind looking uncomfortable. The children had been dispatched to the backyard, leaving the adults to what my father ominously called sorting this mess out. "Audrey," Heather began, clearly designated as the mediator, "I understand you're going through something right now, but selling the house seems extreme." "It's not extreme. It's a practical decision. I'm moving to Denver for a new job opportunity." Keith, who had always been peripheral to family dynamics, spoke up unexpectedly. "Denver's a great market right now. Growing tech sector, outdoor lifestyle. Smart move, professionally." My father shot him a glare that could have melted steel. "Not helpful, Keith." "Just saying," Keith replied. "Career-wise, it makes sense." My mother ignored this tangent. "But why so suddenly? Why not give us time to find a place, get organized? The closing will be in 30 days. That's standard. You have a month to make arrangements." "A month?" my father exploded. "To find an apartment, pack everything, in this rental market? It's impossible." "I managed to organize selling a house and relocating to another state in a week," I pointed out. "I'm sure between the two of you, finding a local apartment in a month is doable." Heather looked between us, clearly struggling with divided loyalties. "Mom, Dad, Audrey does have the right to sell her own house. Maybe we should focus on helping you find a new place." My father's betrayed expression would have been comical if it weren't so predictable. "You're taking her side." "I'm not taking sides. I'm being practical. If the house is for sale, you need somewhere to live." The conversation deteriorated from there, with my parents cycling through anger, guilt-tripping, and finally bargaining. "Just give us 3 months," my mother pleaded. "Until after the holidays." "The market is hot right now," I replied. "Waiting would be financially irresponsible." My father snorted. "Since when do you care about money more than family?" The irony of his statement hung in the air between us. If only he knew how his own words about me had set this all in motion. But I held my tongue, refusing to give away the knowledge that fueled my resolve. By Sunday, the tension in the house was unbearable. My parents had shifted to cold silence, a tactic they'd employed throughout my childhood when I disappointed them. We drove to brunch in complete silence, the atmosphere in the car thick with unspoken recriminations. At the Drake, I received a text from Natalie, "Huge turnout. At least 40 parties so far. Several very interested." Monday morning brought news that exceeded even Natalie's optimistic projections. "We have 7 offers," she announced when I called her from work. "The highest is $875,000, all cash, 21-day close, minimal contingencies." "Accept it," I said without hesitation. "Are you sure? We could counter, maybe push them to $885,000. The speed is more important to me than squeezing out another $10,000. By the time I returned home that evening, I had a signed purchase agreement and a closing date, June 17th, exactly 3 weeks away. The buyers had waived the inspection contingency based on the home's age and condition, requiring only a standard appraisal for their lender. Meanwhile, Melissa in Denver had found me a perfect apartment, a 2-bedroom with mountain views and a secure building downtown, walking distance to my new office. "I can hold it with a deposit," she said. "It'll be available June 20th, if that timing works for you." 3 days after closing, just enough time to drive from Chicago to Denver with whatever possessions I decided to keep. The next phase was sorting and packing. I hired a professional organizer, Laura Bennett, who specialized in downsizing. "Think of it as curating your life," she suggested as we stood in my bedroom, surveying the accumulated possessions of my adult life. "Keep only what serves your new chapter." Together, we created 3 categories: keep, sell, donate, and discard. My wardrobe was ruthlessly edited, the formal business attire of Chicago banking giving way to Denver's more casual tech culture. Furniture that wouldn't fit in my new apartment was consigned to high-end resale shops. Books were boxed for donation to the local library, save for a carefully selected collection I couldn't bear to part with. My colleague Danielle volunteered to help one weekend, arriving with coffee and an efficient attitude that matched my own. "Victoria's in denial," she confided as we wrapped framed photographs in bubble wrap. "She keeps telling everyone you'll change your mind before the transfer paperwork goes through." "Not a chance," I replied, carefully packing away a photo of my college graduation, the only one where both my parents appeared genuinely proud of me. Had that been real, or just for the camera? As we worked, memories surfaced of my ex-boyfriend Connor, who'd never understood my family dynamics. "You drop everything whenever they call," he'd complained during our last fight. "It's like you're their parent, not the other way around." I'd ended things shortly after, convinced he was being selfish for not understanding my family obligations. Now I wondered if he'd seen what I'd been blind to all along. By the second week, the house was half-packed, my life sorted into neat, labeled boxes. The Denver job offer had been formalized with a generous relocation package and starting salary that exceeded my Chicago position. Victoria had reluctantly processed my transfer request, extracting a promise that I'd train my replacement before leaving. My parents' efforts to find their own place had been half-hearted at best. My father made a show of circling apartment listings in the newspaper but complained that everything was too expensive or too small. My mother mentioned moving in with Heather temporarily with increasing frequency, despite Heather's obvious reluctance. During one of our family calls, 3 days before closing, I returned home to find them waiting for me in the living room, Heather beside them looking uncomfortable. The formal arrangement of furniture, them on the sofa, a chair positioned opposite, made it clear this was an intervention. "We need to talk," my father began, using the authoritative tone that had once sent me scrambling to please him. "This has gone far enough." "Far enough?" I repeated, setting my purse down but remaining standing. "The movers come tomorrow. The closing is in 3 days. This isn't a negotiation." "Audrey, please sit down," my mother said, patting the chair they'd positioned like a defendant's dock before a judge. "We're worried about you." Heather nodded, though her expression was conflicted. "We just want to understand what's happening. This isn't like you." I sat, crossing my legs and folding my hands in my lap, the poised professional even in the midst of family drama. "What exactly isn't like me? Making a career decision? Moving to a new city? Millions of people do these things every day. Abandoning your family without warning," my father clarified, his jaw tight. "Throwing your parents out of their home. It's selfish and ungrateful. It's not abandonment, it's relocation. And it's not their home, it's mine." I kept my voice level. "I've given you 3 weeks' notice, which is more than fair." "Fair?" My mother's voice rose, tears already gathering. She'd always been able to cry on command, a skill I'd both envied and resented. "After everything we've done for you?" The question hung in the air, so absurd I almost laughed. Everything they'd done for me? What exactly did they think that entailed? "Mom," Heather interjected gently, "maybe we should focus on solutions. Audrey has made her decision about the house." My father wasn't ready to concede. No daughter who respected her parents would do this. "It's selfish and ungrateful. I expected better from you, Audrey. You've always been a disappointment, but this takes it to a new level." There it was, a disappointment. The same word he'd used with Stanley, not knowing I could hear. The final thread of my restraint snapped. "A disappointment?" I repeated, my voice deadly calm. "Like when you told Stanley I was nothing, a failure, should have never been born." The color drained from my father's face. Beside him, my mother went completely still. That's right, I continued, my eyes locked on his. 3 weeks ago, you forgot to hang up your call properly. I heard everything. Every word about how pathetic I am, how embarrassed you are to live with me, how Heather is your real achievement, while I'm just the ATM funding your comfortable retirement. Heather's gasp was audible. Dad, what is she talking about? My father recovered quickly, his expression shifting to defensive indignation. You were eavesdropping on a private conversation. I came home early to share good news about a client presentation. You were broadcasting your conversation through the whole house because you can't operate video call software properly. I pulled away before she could touch me. You clearly misunderstood. I heard you too, Mom, I interrupted. Joining in about how cold I am, how focused on money and status, how you're tired of walking on eggshells around me and pretending to be interested in my work stories. How the expensive Christmas watches I bought you were tasteless. How you're both just playing the game until you can afford to move near Heather. My mother's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. Beside her, my father switched tactics. Everyone vents sometimes, Audrey. You're taking things out of context. Of course we appreciate everything you do for us. Do you? I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder I'd prepared for this moment, though I hadn't been sure it would come. Let me show you what everything looks like. I opened the folder and removed a spreadsheet, sliding it across the coffee table toward them. This is a complete accounting of what I've spent supporting you both for the past 3 years. Mortgage payments, $144,000. Utilities, $14,236. Groceries and household expenses, $28,500. Car insurance, cell phone bills, medical expenses not covered by Medicare, $22,375. Home repairs and improvements, $31,900. I turned to a second page. Plus the loans that were never repaid. Dad's new truck after the bankruptcy, $42,000. Mom's cosmetic dental work, $8,400. The Florida vacation last winter, $6,700. Heather's children's private school application fees that you insisted on covering, $3,600. Heather's head snapped up. What? They told me you offered to pay those. I did, after they pressured me. Just like I've been secretly funding your children's college accounts for the past 5 years. $500 a month, automatically transferred. That's $30,000 they haven't bothered to tell you about. The look of shock on her face confirmed what I'd suspected. Our parents had taken credit for my financial contributions to her children's future, just as they'd taken credit for my success when it suited them. You've been supporting us, yes, my father acknowledged grudgingly, but that's what family does. We raised you, put you through college. My scholarships and student loans put me through college, I corrected. Which I paid off myself. As for raising me, let's talk about that. I turned to Heather. Did you know Dad missed my high school graduation because Kelsey had a dance recital the same day? Heather frowned. That's not how they explained it to me. They said you told them not to come because you were embarrassed about Dad's bankruptcy. Of course that's what they told you. I shook my head. Years of collected slights and dismissals suddenly crystallizing into a clear pattern. They've been playing us against each other our whole lives, making you the golden child and me the responsible one, ensuring we never compared notes. My mother stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. We've always loved both our daughters equally. Really? Then why did you tell Stanley that Heather is Dad's real achievement, while I'm just a pathetic workaholic? Why did you spend more on Heather's prom dress than you did on my entire college dorm setup? Why have you attended every single one of her children's birthday parties but forgot mine for 3 years running? The silence that followed was deafening. My father stared at the financial spreadsheet, seemingly unable to dispute the concrete evidence of my support. My mother had given up on tears and was now looking at me with something close to hatred, her mask of maternal concern completely dropped. I don't expect answers, I continued, gathering the papers and returning them to my bag. I don't even want them anymore. What I want is for you to understand exactly why I'm leaving. It's not about the money, it's about the decades of emotional manipulation and favoritism. It's about discovering that the people I've sacrificed everything for see me as nothing but a convenient resource. I turned to Heather, whose expression had shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension. I don't blame you. You didn't create this dynamic, they did. But I'm done with it. What about us? My father finally asked, gesturing between himself and my mother. Where are we supposed to go in 3 days? That's not my problem anymore. I've accepted a position with Westbrook Financial in Denver. I'm leaving the day after closing. You can't just abandon us, my mother insisted, panic replacing anger. We're your parents. Being a parent is more than biology, I replied, standing up. It's support, encouragement, and love, things I've given you far more of than I've ever received. I headed for the door, signaling the end of the conversation. You can stay until closing day. After that, you're on your own. Heather rose as well, her expression troubled. Mom, Dad, maybe you could stay with us for a little while, until you find a place. The speed with which they pivoted to their backup plan was almost impressive. My mother's tears turned on cue as she embraced Heather. Oh, sweetheart, we wouldn't want to impose. It's fine, Heather said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. The guest room is small, but it's just temporary. I caught her eye over our mother's shoulder, and for the first time in our adult lives, I felt a moment of true connection with my sister, a shared recognition of the manipulation we'd both been subject to in different ways. She gave me a small, sad nod. As they discussed logistics, I quietly left the room. There was nothing more to say. The truth had been laid bare, the decision made. In 3 days, I would close this chapter of my life and begin writing a new one on my own terms, without the weight of unrequited family obligation dragging me down. Closing day arrived with a sense of finality that was both terrifying and liberating. I met Natalie at the title company's office, signing document after document, initialing pages until my hand cramped. When the final paper was processed, she handed me a cashier's check for $823,450, the sale price minus the remaining mortgage balance and closing costs. Congratulations, she said, shaking my hand. Most of my clients are sad on closing day, but you look relieved. I am, I admitted. It's a fresh start. My parents had moved out the previous day, reluctantly relocating to Heather's guest room with promises that they'd find the perfect place soon. They'd taken far more than their personal belongings, kitchen appliances I'd purchased, the new living room furniture, even bathroom fixtures that should have stayed with the house. I let it go. The material things seemed insignificant compared to the emotional baggage I was leaving behind. After the closing, I returned to the empty house for one final walkthrough. Each room held memories, some good, many tainted now by the knowledge of my parents' true feelings. The kitchen where I'd prepared countless family meals. The dining room where I'd endured subtle criticisms disguised as concern. The home office where I'd overheard the conversation that changed everything. I was standing in my old bedroom when Heather arrived, alone. I thought you might be here, she said, hovering in the doorway. The kids are with Keith's mom. I wanted to help with any last-minute things. I'm all packed, I replied, gesturing to the bare room. The movers took everything yesterday. She nodded, stepping further inside. I'm sorry, Audrey. About all of it. I had no idea they felt that way about you. I know, I assured her. It's not your fault. But I benefited from it, she acknowledged, surprising me with her insight. My whole life, I got the praise, the attention, the support. I never questioned why. Because it was normal to you. Why would you question it? We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of shared history between us. Are we going to stay in touch? She finally asked. After you move? I'd like to, I said honestly. You and the kids. We can video chat, figure out a new relationship without them in the middle. She smiled tentatively. I'd like that too. Together, we walked through the house one last time, locking doors and closing blinds. At the front entrance, I handed her the spare key I'd been keeping for the buyers. Take care of yourself in Denver, she said, embracing me awkwardly. We'd never been physically affectionate siblings. Take care of yourself with them, I replied. Don't let them do to you what they did to me. As I drove away from the house that had been both my dream and my prison, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete freedom. The weight of familial expectations, the constant striving for approval that would never come, the exhausting dance of trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it unconditionally, all of it fell away. My phone buzzed with texts from my parents, increasing in desperation as the reality of their situation set in. I glanced at them briefly. Demands for contact information, accusations of cruelty, finally promises to make things right if I'd just come back. I deleted them all without reading fully and blocked their numbers. The drive to Denver took 2 days, with Zoe riding shotgun as my co-pilot and emotional support. We'd planned it as an adventure, a cleansing journey from my old life to the new. As Chicago receded in the rearview mirror, I felt the tension I'd carried for years begin to dissolve. You know what's funny? I said as we crossed into Iowa. For the first time in my adult life, I don't know what my parents think about a major decision I'm making. And I don't care. How does that feel? Zoe asked. Terrifying, I admitted. And amazing. Denver welcomed us with stunning mountain views and clear blue skies. My new apartment was everything Melissa had promised: modern, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the distant Rockies. The furnishings I'd kept fit perfectly, and what was missing could be replaced in time. "This place is gorgeous," Zoe declared as we uncorked a bottle of champagne that first night. "To new beginnings. To freedom," I countered, clinking my glass against hers. My new position at Westbrook Financial began the following Monday. The team welcomed me warmly, and the work itself was engaging, similar enough to my previous role to leverage my expertise, different enough to present new challenges. My boss, Monica Evans, had a management style that emphasized results over face time, a refreshing change from Chicago's more traditional banking culture. 1 month into my new life, I was establishing routines: morning runs in a nearby park, weekend hikes in the foothills, evenings spent reading or exploring my new city. My apartment was taking shape, becoming a true reflection of my tastes without accommodation for anyone else's preferences. The phone call from Heather came on a Sunday afternoon. "How's Denver?" she asked after pleasantries were exchanged. "It's wonderful," I replied truthfully. "How are things there?" Her hesitation told me everything before she spoke. "Challenging. Mom and Dad are still with us. They've looked at a few apartments but always find reasons why they won't work. Let me guess: too small, too expensive, wrong neighborhood?" "Exactly," she sighed. "And they're not contributing to household expenses. Keith is getting frustrated." "They did the same thing to me," I reminded her gently. "It's a pattern." "I know. She paused. "I feel guilty even complaining to you about it, after what you went through." "Don't. We're both their daughters, just in different roles." After we hung up, I felt a momentary pang of guilt. Had I simply shifted their burden from my shoulders to Heather's? But I reminded myself that Heather had Keith, a partnership to help bear the weight. And unlike me, she'd been raised with the tools to set boundaries, having seen them modeled by our parents her entire life, just not toward her. 3 months after leaving Chicago, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line simply read, "Missing you." The message inside was brief. "Audrey, I've been thinking about our last conversation and the things you said. You were right about many things. I miss my daughter. If you're willing, I'd like to talk. Just talk. No expectations. Mom." I read it several times, searching for hidden manipulations but finding none. After discussing it with my therapist in Denver, yes, I'd continued therapy, recognizing that healing from family trauma was ongoing work. I agreed to a video call. The conversation was awkward but more honest than any we'd had in years. My mother looked older, the stress of their housing situation clearly weighing on her. She didn't apologize directly, but she acknowledged that they'd taken advantage of my generosity and failed to show proper appreciation. "I think we forgot that you had feelings that could be hurt," she said, a remarkable admission from someone who'd never before acknowledged causing me pain. It wasn't a magical reconciliation, years of dysfunctional patterns couldn't be undone in a single conversation. But it was a beginning. We agreed to have monthly calls, with the understanding that our relationship would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. My father, unsurprisingly, chose a different path. When I asked about him during that first call, my mother's expression darkened. "He's not ready to admit he was wrong. He may never be." 6 months after my move, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold. My phone buzzed with a text from my new neighbor, Gabriel, a software engineer who'd become a friend and possibly something more. "Hiking this afternoon? The trails look perfect." I smiled, typing back my acceptance. For the first time in my adult life, I was making decisions based purely on what I wanted, not what others expected or demanded. The freedom was intoxicating. My parents eventually found their own place, a small apartment near Heather's family, subsidized partially by the rental income they now paid her. It wasn't the retirement dream they'd envisioned, but it was independence of sorts. Heather and I maintained our weekly calls, building a sister relationship based on mutual respect rather than parental favoritism. The money I'd received from selling the house sat mostly untouched in carefully managed investments, growing toward a future I was building entirely on my own terms. I'd learned that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in the freedom to choose your own path, surround yourself with people who genuinely value you, and wake up each morning without the weight of others' expectations crushing your spirit. As I prepared for my day, a work presentation I was excited about, lunch with a colleague who'd become a genuine friend, an evening hiking with Gabriel, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain of that overheard conversation had been excruciating, but it had also been liberating. It forced me to see clearly what I'd been unwilling to acknowledge: that love without respect is manipulation, that family obligations should flow both ways, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who diminish your light. My father's words, "She's nothing, a failure, should have never been born," no longer had the power to wound me. Because I'd proven him wrong in the most fundamental way possible, I'd chosen to value myself enough to build a life worth living, surrounded by people who saw my worth clearly and celebrated it freely. That's the real revenge, isn't it? Not proving someone wrong, but proving yourself right about your own value. Not making them regret their words, but making those words irrelevant to your happiness. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most clearly, if you've ever sacrificed your dreams to fund someone else's comfort, if you've ever wondered whether you deserve better, I'm here to tell you that you do. The hardest part isn't recognizing that you deserve more, it's believing you have the strength to demand it. Sometimes the best thing you can do for toxic family members is to stop enabling their behavior and start modeling what self-respect looks like. You might be surprised how many of them are capable of growth when they realize their actions have consequences. And if they're not capable of change? Then you've lost nothing of value, and gained everything that matters: your freedom, your peace, and the opportunity to build relationships based on genuine love and mutual respect. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own well-being? Share your story in the comments below. You might inspire someone else who needs to hear that they're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about family dynamics, setting boundaries, and the courage to choose yourself when others won't choose you. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't sacrifice, it's showing people what you're worth by refusing to accept less. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your value doesn't depend on others' ability to see it clearly. You are worth more than their limitations will ever let them understand.